as great as it is to see David Ortiz get in, what happened today was a travesty. What happened today is a shame. We had the Hall of Fame. We should also have the Hall of Shame. Because, and shouts to Zach, he already know what it is. He knows what's coming next. What I saw is a sport that likes to pick and choose when they want to be on their high horse, right? David Ortiz, as great as he is, Mike Piazza, as great as he is, they all have some type of checkered situation going on. They were in a report, but they never really tested, or, Mike Piazza came out and said, okay. But here's my problem. You can't have a Hall of Fame without your most important milestone breakers. Pete Rose is the hits leader, not in the Hall of Fame. Roger Clemens is one of the greatest strikeout artists of all time, not in the Hall of Fame. Curt Schilling, who's actually a part of those Boston teams that David Ortiz was on, not in the Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds, the all-time home run leader, the guy that had more intentional walks in a single season than most teams have combined. That guy who had, 7 MVPs? Guy who hit over 700 home runs, who has over 500 stolen bases. That guy doesn't get into the Hall of Fame. So let me get this straight. For a sport that was dead in the mid-90s, had a strike, nobody cared about baseball. You know what brought baseball back in 98? The home run ball. The home run chase of 98 between McGwire and Sosa. Newsflash, 2 steroid users. Everybody was dancing in the streets, celebrating because the ratings. Everybody was just watching baseball. Sosa and McGwire were on Oprah. Baseball on Oprah? That's how big it was, and the money was coming in, and everybody was loving it. But then Barry Bonds said, you know what? Maybe I should try it. Maybe I should try to get into the celebration because they're having so much fun. So why don't I do it? A lot of other players said the same thing. Barry Bonds did what he did, allegedly, right? But that still doesn't take away from the Hall of Fame career this man had. He had 500 stolen bases before 98. He had 500 homers before that time as well. Had, 3 MVPs? But because they want to be on their high horse, they can be able to keep him out. I always remember how disrespectful Bud Selig was when Bonds broke the record. He didn't even want to acknowledge him. Like, Barry Bonds is the one who put a black stain on your game. Newsflash, baseball has been a shit sport for a long time in regards to corruption and BS and steroid use and all these other things. It's not innocent. But you would think that these writers would make it seem like this sport is the purest thing ever. Newsflash, you kept blacks and Spanish players out of your league. It took a while for you guys to even realize what you were doing. Hell, the Boston Red Sox took the longest to actually have the first black player on the team. So we're going to talk about dignity and pride and honor and all these other things that all of these old head writers like to talk about. How can you erase numbers? They're there. Barry Bonds, his numbers won't go away. They shouldn't go away because he did them. Whether you think it's wrong or not, they're there. We don't know what steroids does. We still don't know what it does. All I know is a great player with great numbers and a great career has been blacklisted out of the Hall of Fame, as well as Roger Clemens, as well as Curt Schilling, as well as some others. It's bullshit. That's all it is. That's all it is. Just because they don't like Barry Bonds, they don't like Roger Clemens, they don't like Curt Schilling, maybe for whatever views he has politically or not. They don't like him. I don't care about none of that stuff. I care about what they did on the baseball diamond, on the field. Because if we kind of go into history, how do you know that those players back in the day weren't taking amphetamines? How do you know that they weren't taking supplements or enhancements to be able to stay on the field and stay healthy? But those guys get held in high acclaim. Oh, those guys that played in 1820, so good. Those guys who played it in 1920, so good. I keep hearing about Mickey Mantle. I keep hearing about all these guys. I don't care. They had their time in the sun. They're in the Hall of Fame. Don't deny guys who have the numbers in. That's nonsense. A game that's been dirty for decades is looking at players who bent the rules as, you can't come in. Numbers are numbers. It's just like I say, the monuments around the United States, don't take them down. You put something there. You put something there and you say, hey, this was this and this is why this happened and blah, blah, blah. Put Barry Bonds in. If you want to say that this was a steroid era and, the numbers, we don't know what's what, okay. But you give that man his plaque. You give that man the respect of being in the Hall of Fame because he deserves it. All of these baseball enthusiasts and these baseball quote-unquote purists, these guys, hey, they cheated the game. They cheated the game. I'm sure that those are the same people that guys who make mistakes in their lives, probably made some mistakes when they were younger. They look at them as, they don't deserve a second chance. No. There's nothing wrong with giving these people a second chance. There's nothing wrong with giving Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Curt Schilling their time in the sun. Because the last time I checked, my eyes told me that there's probably maybe 3 baseball players that are better than Barry Bonds in the history of the game. That guy's not in the Hall of Fame. Make it make sense to me. It can't make sense to me because the old white men that are on the writers' board or whatever it is for the Hall of Fame, they can't see around it because he's cheated the game and he wasn't a good person. He wasn't a great interview. So the first chance they get to stick it to Barry Bonds, that's what they do. This is why nobody watches your dead sport. Nobody cares about baseball. This is why kids in the inner cities don't play it. Because where's the payoff? Guys that look like me, guys that look like them, you just told them that they're not allowed in the Hall of Fame. You just told them that maybe the greatest player that they've ever seen is not allowed in the Hall of Fame because of what you think. Yet there's other people that have admitted that they did wrong. They're in. Hell, I'm a Mets fan, and I think that Mike Piazza getting into the Hall of Fame over Barry Bonds is bullshit. Call a spade a spade. But this is why nobody watches your dead sport. This is why the lockout is going on, and only people in that little sectional part of the United States, and maybe some people overseas, give a shit. It's because you've made the game boring. You've made the game unpleasant to watch. You've made your decisions bigger than baseball. You're not bigger than baseball. You're just somebody that stencils your name or stencils your little circle somewhere. That's your importance to society. Nobody should know your name. Nobody should care about what you do outside of just doing the right thing by putting Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and Curt Schilling in the Hall of Fame. No. You want to make it about you. I wouldn't let my kid. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about what your moral opinions are. There's a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame in football and basketball that didn't have great off the field situations, that weren't great guys on the court, on the field, but they're in the Hall of Fame because their numbers say that they are. This is why, for as long as I've loved baseball, I'm starting to go the other way now. Because guys that deserve to be in on their numbers, no matter how I feel about them personally, I'm not a big Roger Clemens fan, I'm not a Curt Schilling fan, but they deserve to be there. And if somebody like me can be able to say that in regards to how I feel about them personally, why should you that have the power to bring them in, think otherwise? You're penalizing these guys for something that wasn't even considered illegal or a banned substance. Like, really? Really? So as soon as if you want to say that everybody who's tested positive after we put the mandate down and you want to go ahead and draw that line in the sand, fine. Not Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds deserves to go in. Kids need to know how great this guy was. They need to be able to go to Cooperstown and see all of the great milestones and achievements that this man single-handedly put on and did. They're not going to get that chance now because they're off the ballot. How convenient. I'm sure that's what the plan was this entire time. Makes you guys look tough, right? Makes you guys look smart. It makes you look small. It makes baseball look small. On a day where we're supposed to be cheering and celebrating David Ortiz, we got to talk about this shit. We got to talk about how you guys can go from one extreme to the next. It don't make sense. And this is why nobody cares. This is why nobody cares about baseball. This is why baseball will fall lower than NASCAR. It'll fall lower than golf. Because nobody wants to be you guys anymore. You guys are just, you'll sit there in your little room with your little desk, with your little paper, and feel like the biggest person in the world when you're really not. I've never been more ashamed to be a baseball fan as I am today. Never been more ashamed. And I really don't know how I'm going to be able to get that love for the game back after what they pulled today. You know, a lot of people are going to be on the side of these writers. It's justified. It's bullshit. We all know it. It's bullshit.